Being called Omega level in itself is a pretty big deal in the Marvel universe, but for a few mutants, especially the second-generation mutants like Hope Summers, Nate Gray, David Haller, and Franklin Richards, being Omega level doesn't quite cut it. They transcend into something comparable to gods, with so much power that they have the option of changing reality itself to the manner they see fit. So in this video, we'll discuss the top 20 most powerful mutants who are basically beyond Omega level mutants. Way beyond. Let's begin, shall we? But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Exodus. Exodus is hands down one of the coolest Omega level mutants around. He's basically a knight from the Crusades whose mutant powers got a serious upgrade after running into the ancient apocalypse. Whether he's immortal or just ages super slowly is still a bit of a mystery, but one thing's for sure, he's insanely powerful. In 2022, Marvel revealed that he's powered by faith. Yep, kind of like how Captain Britain, Brian Braddock, gets his strength. But for Exodus, it's not about faith in himself. He gets his real strength from believing in someone or something else. So in Immortal X-Men number 5 by Kieran Gillen and Michelle Bandini, we get a taste of just how epic Exodus really is. There's this flashback to one of his lowest moments. Remember when Scarlet Witch wiped out the powers of almost all mutants, leaving just around 200 with their abilities? Exodus was crushed. He was so broken that he went on a pilgrimage, using his telekinetic powers to keep a bubble of oxygen around him. And then, wait for it, he flew into the freaking sun. Yeah, he flew right into it. That's pretty mind-blowing. Exodus's stunt shows he's way more powerful than any Eternal, and he pulled it off when his faith was at rock bottom. Now, with renewed faith in his mutant messiah, Hope Summers, Exodus is back and better than ever. In the comics, the Eternals unleash these massive beings called the Hex on Krakoa, the living island. They're pretty much on par with the X-Men until Exodus steps in. He takes on one of these gigantic, seemingly unstoppable beings by himself and holds his own. It's crystal clear. When it comes to power, Exodus makes any Eternal look like a lightweight. Jean Grey. Jean Grey is now officially a godlike mutant alpha, or the first ever mutant. It's no secret that Jean, with her telepathic and telekinetic abilities, is one of the most powerful mutants ever. As an Omega level mutant, her powers have no upper limit, which makes her a force to be reckoned with. Needless to say, these abilities are linked so closely to the Phoenix Force that drawing a clear distinction between Jean and the Force becomes a challenge. Where does one end and the other begin? In 2005's Age of Apocalypse miniseries, the Sinister of that reality was obsessed with finding Mutant Alpha. He believed that the genetic code of a single prehistoric mutant gave rise to the entire mutant race. He theorized that this all-powerful mutant's abilities were passed down through generations to ensure the survival of mutants. In the end, he concluded that Jean Grey was this Mutant Alpha. Jean has always been a key figure in the mutant world. Over time, the X-Men realized Jean had a deep connection to the Phoenix Force, possibly because she's Mutant Alpha. She's consistently been the champion and defender of mutants, not just in the main timeline, but also in alternate realities like the Age of Apocalypse and the Ultimate Universe. This aligns perfectly with Sinister's theory that Jean is Mutant Alpha, destined to protect and lead the mutant race. Legion. David Haller, aka Legion, aka the son of Professor X, is more powerful than all of the X-Men combined. We're talking about characters like Jean Grey, Magneto, Storm, Iceman, etc. None of them can touch Legion. His story is a bit disturbing. Xavier wanted a child who could manipulate reality itself, so he and geneticist Moira McTaggart found a woman, Gabrielle Haller, whose genes would help make that happen. Xavier got close to her under the guise of being her counselor, and after a brief relationship, Gabrielle was pregnant. However, she kept this a secret from Xavier for years. Legion had his powers triggered by fear during a terrorist attack when he was just a child. His telepathic powers activated, and not only did he kill the terrorists, but also absorbed their minds into his own. This was the start of Legion's chaotic journey. Amazingly, David has over 200 personalities, and each one has an Omega-level power and persona. Legion's power is off the charts. When magic called on him to deal with the Elder Gods, ancient beings who once ruled the Earth, he erased them from reality like it was nothing. These gods had been a threat that Earth's sorcerers couldn't handle, but Legion took care of them with ease. Legion's powers are mind-blowing. He can manipulate reality, has telepathic and telekinetic abilities, and can access a vast array of other powers through his multiple personalities. Each persona brings something new to the table, which truly makes him a one-mutant army. His ability to absorb and create new personalities means he can adapt to any situation, which also makes him fairly unpredictable. Modern mutants see themselves as gods among men, but compared to Legion, they're like ordinary Asgardians next to Odin the All-Father. Hope Summers. The mutant population in Marvel has had it rough. In most stories, you can see it teetering on the brink of extinction and living in a world where they're hated and feared. The X-Men were facing their darkest days until the arrival of the mutant messiah, Hope Summers. Hope is officially an Omega-level mutant, but she's still relatively new to the X-Men scene. After the events of House of M, where Scarlet Witch's reality-altering "No More Mutants" wiped out most of the mutant population, the X-Men were devastated. Just when it seemed like the end, Cerebro detected a powerful new mutant signature, the first since the decimation, and believe it or not, her birth short-circuited Cerebro. This led to the Messiah Complex storyline. Normally, mutant powers don't manifest until puberty, but this baby was so powerful at birth that she was immediately marked as Omega level. Hope grew up in the future alongside Cable, and returned to the present as a teenager in the Second Coming storyline. They were hunted by the X-Men and the Human Council, a group of anti-mutant extremists led by Bastion. When Hope's powers activated, she absorbed and amplified the combined powers of the X-Men, using them to obliterate Bastion. During the Avengers vs. X-Men event, Hope trained the Kunlun with Spider-Man, Iron Fist, and Scarlet Witch to prepare for the Phoenix Force. She discovered she could absorb and amplify mystical abilities in addition to mutant powers. In a fight with Phoenix-powered Cyclops, Hope absorbed the Iron Fist and Chaos energy from Scarlet Witch and unleashed an overpowered Chaos Fist that sent Cyclops through a space-time tear to the moon. Unlike many others who were corrupted by its power, she mastered the Phoenix Force. After defeating a Dark Phoenix-corrupted Cyclops, Hope became the White Phoenix. With Scarlet Witch's help, she used the Phoenix Force to reignite mutant evolution worldwide and undid Wanda's decimation spell. In the Second Coming storyline, after an explosion left her comatose, she used her powers to possess the brain-dead body of Mimi and became a mutant hacker. During a battle with the enhanced Phantom X, Hope absorbed X-Force's abilities and Phantom X's godlike Volga abilities. So this girl basically short-circuited Cerebro, punched Cyclops to the moon, controlled the Phoenix Force, and became godlike. Need I say more? Elixir. Josh Foley, aka Elixir, was part of the new wave of mutants at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. His ability to heal others with a touch has evolved dramatically over time. Initially known for his healing, Josh discovered a darker side to his powers, realizing he could kill just as easily as he could heal. Elixir can revive people from death, including himself, and manipulate life force to heal or kill. As he got more creative with his abilities, Josh found he could bring himself and others back from the dead. This skill made him essential to Krakoa's resurrection protocols, which earned him a spot alongside Hope Summers on the Krakoan Five. Nate Gray. Nate Gray, aka X-Man, is one of the most powerful mutants ever engineered in the X-Men universe. He's the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, but from the wild Age of Apocalypse reality. This guy's capable of creating or destroying entire worlds with ease. In 1995, Marvel shook things up by pausing all the X-Men titles and replacing them with ones set in the Age of Apocalypse timeline. Instead of Cable number 21, readers got X-Men number 1, which introduced Nate Gray. While a bunch of characters from the Age of Apocalypse made it to Earth 616 over time, Nate was the first, most prominent, and most powerful. Nate's story started in X-Men number 1, with a revelation that he was created by Mr. Sinister, who planned to use him in his power struggle against Apocalypse. But Nate escaped and grew up among peaceful mutants. Starting with X-Men number 5, Nate's struggle was all about fitting into Marvel's main timeline and managing his immense powers. On Earth 616, Nate's raw power drew a lot of attention. Even though he wasn't the most skilled telepath, he was the most powerful. He could mind control Omega Omega Red, Legion, and Magneto all at once and communicate across the multiverse. But his telekinesis was where things got really crazy. Nate could move the tectonic plates of a planet and alter molecular and atomic structures at will. Moira McTaggart once said his psionic strength rivaled that of a Phoenix Force-imbued Jean Grey, and that's just scratching the surface. Nate is also a reality-warping mutant. He once created his own reality, aka the Age of X-Man, which he turned into a mutant paradise. Franklin Richards, aka Powerhouse. Franklin Richards, the son of Reed and Sue Richards, had been classified as beyond Omega level, the highest power classification for mutants in the Marvel Universe. Recently, he's taken on the superhero name Powerhouse, and for good reason. This kid has been showing off his insane abilities for years. Take Mephisto, for instance, who's basically the devil in Marvel's universe. When Mephisto captured the souls of Reed, Sue, and Franklin, Dr. Strange freed young Franklin, who then obliterated Mephisto with powerful energy blasts from his eyes. Yeah, he's that powerful. Oh, and he was just a baby back then, calling Mephisto a bad man. Franklin's main Omega-level power is reality warping, but he's got a bunch of psionic abilities that rival other Omega-level mutants like Quentin Quire and Jean Grey. As Tattletale, he was a part-time member of Power Pack and used his prophetic dreams to tap into events happening galaxies away. All this before his mutant abilities were supposed to kick in. In the Death of Galactus storyline, after Abraxas escaped from his prison within Eternity and planned to destroy reality using the ultimate nullifier, Franklin stepped up. He combined his powers with his sister Valeria Von Doom's to resurrect Galactus. Yep, he resurrected the Planet Eater. Future Franklin, along with his adult sister Valeria, played a huge role in the Fantastic Four's battle against the Mad Celestials, who wanted to conquer the multiverse. Future Franklin not only held his own against these Mad Celestials, but he also resurrected a fallen Galactus from his time, who was serving as his herald. This shows just how powerful Franklin is destined to become. But let's talk about his most mind-blowing feat: recreating the multiverse. After a series of incursions that ended the multiverse and led to the Secret Wars event, Dr. Doom used the powers of the Molecule Man and the Beyonder to create Battleworld and make himself God. But it was Franklin who helped reset everything. Gabriel Summers, aka Vulcan. Gabriel Summers, better known as Vulcan, is the long-lost younger brother of X-Men members Scott, aka Cyclops, and Alex Summers, aka Havoc. Through a series of crazy and brutal events, he turned into a ruthless intergalactic imperialist with a serious grudge against the X-Men. Like his brothers, Vulcan is a living battery of energy, but he's way more powerful than both of them combined. Vulcan can absorb insane amounts of almost any kind of energy you can think of. Radiation, electricity, light, heat, and even metaphysical stuff like Scott's optic beams and even magic. He can release this energy in devastating blasts or shape it into different forms. Plus, he can bend existing energy sources to his will, fly at blinding speeds, and survive in the harshest conditions. Ed Brubaker, the writer and creator of Vulcan, has hinted that Vulcan's power goes way beyond what we've seen. In fact, Vulcan and the X-Men don't even realize the full scope of his abilities yet. Brubaker suggests that Vulcan can control magical or extra-dimensional energy, and he might even be able to manipulate natural elements like fire, wind, water, darkness, and light. But manipulating darkness sounds a bit strange, as it's basically the absence of light. But then again, imagine turning these elements into energy and then doing whatever you want with it. If that doesn't scream Omega-level mutant, I don't know what does. Tarn the Uncaring. Tarn the Uncaring is one of the most wicked and powerful mutants to emerge from the recent Krakoan era of X-Men stories. His ability to accelerate the mutation of those around him makes him pretty darn dangerous. Although he was killed off early in the run of X-Men Red Volume 2, the only purpose of his death was to highlight Magneto's strength. Before his death, Tarn had a run-in with Storm. He challenged her authority and ended up with a dagger in his chest, but not before he twisted Storm's genetic makeup, pushing her mutation to terrifying levels. In Resurrection number 1, we get a glimpse of their past tensions and the full extent of Tarn's horrifying powers. Tarn can manipulate the genetic makeup of mutants around him, accelerating their mutations and pushing them to new, often nightmarish extremes. During his confrontation with Storm, he said some really scary things. "All mutants are my canvas. This is my true self. Vast, ever-expanding, ever-evolving, ever-reaching to new and greater heights. What you call monstrosity, I call the new frontier of being. And when I return to the living world, I will journey further yet. Behold, Ororo, the true mutant superior. No longer mutant, but mutation itself." Tarn's return is more a question of when than if. When he comes back, he's set to redefine the Marvel Universe's understanding of mutant kind and mutation itself. His power to alter the genetic makeup of mutants makes him a threat unlike any other, and his potential for chaos and destruction is nearly unmatched. Isca the Unbeaten. Isca the Unbeaten is an ancient mutant from the old island of Okara. She used to be tight with Apocalypse and his crew, and often fought alongside them against their enemy, the world of Amenth. But when it became clear that Amenth was going to crush the mutants of Okara, Isca switched sides. This all went down in X-Men number 14 by Jonathan Hickman. She didn't want to abandon her friends, but her powers left her no choice. As her name suggests, she can never be beaten. This power makes her an Omega-level mutant, which means she's insanely powerful, no matter what kind of conflict she's in, and no matter how much she cares for her old allies, she will always win, even if it means teaming up with the people she just tried to kill. She has this built-in ability to always come out on top, no matter the situation. It's like reality bends to make sure she's on the winning side. If she's in a fight and things start looking bad, her power will force her to switch sides to ensure she doesn't lose. This makes her both an unstoppable force and an unpredictable ally. If you're on her side, you're golden. Unless things go south, then she's your worst nightmare. James Braddock, aka Monarch. Jamie Braddock is a reality-warping powerhouse who often uses his abilities for bad guy things, unlike his other family members. As the older brother of Brian Braddock, aka Captain Britain, and Betsy Braddock, aka Psylocke, he still tries to keep an eye on his siblings, even if it means putting himself in danger. Jamie sees the world in a pretty weird fashion, like a bunch of invisible quantum strings tangled up in messy balls of wool. He can pull on these strings to twist reality to reshape people into other individuals, animals, or grotesque caricatures. He often makes them shrink or grow, redirects energy, or changes memories. He can also peek into other realities and even grant powers to objects there. Initially, Jamie could only manipulate dense forms, had to be close enough to touch the so-called cosmic filaments that things were made of, and if his concentration slipped, things he changed could revert to normal. Interestingly, his power seems to grow along with his sanity, especially after he spends time in a coma. Nowadays, with just a thought, Jamie can create vast, complex illusions, redirect someone's teleportation, and open interdimensional portals. He can raise the dead and make someone immune to external influences by tightening their quantum strings, though he can still mess with them since he knows which strings to pull. He's even made functional copies of the Fury and could probably copy other objects too. Physical damage doesn't faze him. Even big holes shot through him are just cosmetic and heal quickly.
Don't make me bust you up! Hey! Stop it!
Proteus. Kevin McTaggart, better known as Proteus, is the mutant son of geneticist and longtime X-Men ally Moira McTaggart. His reality-warping powers are so dangerous that he had to be confined in his mom's research facility. But of course, he eventually escaped and wreaked havoc on the X-Men. Proteus can transmute matter and energy into any form or state he wants. He can twist space around him and defy all the laws of physics and logic. His powers are insanely potent, but they come with a big downside. They destroy his physical body. Because of this, he has to possess others to survive, which he can do since he's made of pure energy. His only real weakness is metal. His energy form can't tolerate inorganic materials. He can change reality on a whim, turn matter and energy into anything he imagines, and warp space itself. However, his powers are so intense that they burn out his body, forcing him to constantly find new hosts. Despite his incredible strength, metal is his Achilles heel, as his energy form can't handle it. Magneto. Magneto made his big debut in 1963's The X-Men #1, and he's been a Marvel icon ever since. Sure, he started out as your typical one-dimensional villain, but he quickly became one of the most complex and compelling characters in comic book history. As he evolved, so did his superpowers, and now he's recognized as one of the most powerful mutants ever. He can control magnetism and electromagnetism, and since electromagnetism is everywhere, writers have had a blast coming up with insanely creative ways for him to use his powers. During one of his more heroic phases, Magneto tried to clean up his bad rep by rejoining the X-Men. When he learned about a massive earthquake about to hit San Francisco, he saw a chance for some good PR. In Uncanny X-Men number 534.1, he swoops in and ends up saving countless lives and preventing millions in property damage. He keeps buildings standing by securing their metal frames and levitating vehicles, and even manipulates the Earth's mantle to lessen the quake's impact. Stabilizing an entire city like that? Yeah, that's a god-level feat. But there's more. In Magneto Dark Seduction, he shows off his destructive side by leveling the city of Corian Cove in Genosha. With help from his daughter Polaris, he wipes out the city in a single wild surge of power to regain control of Genosha. After the dust settles, he spends 2 days rebuilding the city, but it's clear his ego played a big part in that move. Once, he even generated a wormhole out of thin air to save Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. And during a crisis with the Celestials, he prevented the West Coast from being wiped out by acting as the central nervous system for the dreaming Celestial, and used his powers to piece it back together. So you could say that he kinda turned into a Celestial. In the Ultimate Universe's Ultimatum arc, a vengeful Magneto reverses Earth's polarity, causing millions of deaths, which is what he did in X-Men '97 as well. And we know what he did to Wolverine in the show. I mean, ripping that guy's adamantium? Whoa, that's sheer evil and cruel. But then he did the same in the Fatal Attractions event, which you can check out on our Comic Explained channel, Marvelous Long Reads. You'd be surprised to know that he has also stopped the Mjolnir. Given that Mjolnir can knock over Galactus, damage the Phoenix Force, and break space-time, the fact that Magneto can deflect it with his shields is nothing short of amazing. And let's not forget when he took down Apocalypse in the Age of Apocalypse timeline. With unmatched control over matter, Apocalypse is practically a god. But Magneto, using his magnetic powers, literally tore him to pieces, thereby ending his reign of terror. Talk about impressive.
Heed my command and reclaim these relics of hatred!
Storm. Storm has always been one of the strongest mutants in the Marvel Universe, and is known for her incredible weather-controlling powers. But in Sword number 11, Storm shows off her control of air pressure and uses it to annihilate a horde of cybernetic enemies. We all know she can whip up hurricanes, cyclones, and lightning, but this is something else. By manipulating air pressure, she can crush anything around her. She's always been the weather goddess, but as the regent of Araco, a terraformed planet, she's more godlike than ever. During her time in Wakanda, Storm revealed she has been blessed with godhead, and surpasses even the terrifying adversary, who you may remember from X-Men '97. In fact, her power grows with the number of people worshipping her. One of Storm's many titles is Hadari Yao, meaning Cloudwalker in the ancient language of the Alkama Fields, but it also implies she maintains nature's balance. Storm can already fly pretty fast by creating powerful winds to propel her, but controlling lightning takes her speed to another level. She can cast a lightning bolt and ride it and hit her enemies at Mach speed and 10,000 volts, which is what you would call a shock entrance. At one point, Storm wielded the Asgardian weapon Stormcaster. Though she eventually lost it, it made a comeback, like all good things in comics. She used Stormcaster to take down the dark god Uovu, who had taken over the Uzuri tribe after she left for the X-Men. She turned him to dust with Stormcaster, but honestly, she doesn't even need it anymore. Storm's power isn't just limited to gods, she's taken on cosmic beings too. When Silver Surfer tangled with Black Panther, Storm stepped in. She created an atmosphere around the Surfer, gathered hydrogen atoms, and blasted him with lightning. With her ability to manipulate fundamental building blocks of physics, there are theoretically no limits to her power. And I mean, she is a goddess, so there's no way she won't do god-level stuff. Kid Omega. Quentin Quire, aka Kid Omega, is one of the most powerful and intriguing mutants out there. This guy's got telepathic and telekinetic abilities that blew even Professor X's mind. With his superhuman intellect, Quentin often debated Xavier on whether humans and mutants could truly coexist, and became something of a protege. But everything changed when Quentin found out he was adopted. He felt betrayed and secretly formed the Omega Gang, a group of students who ended up killing humans in a nearby town. It turned out Quentin's violent outburst was a twisted attempt to impress Sophie, one of the Stepford Cuckoos, and cope with his identity crisis. When he learned Sophie died using the mutant drug Kick to boost her powers and stop him, Quentin fell into a catatonic state. The X-Men discovered that Quentin's own use of Kick had supercharged his psionic energies and triggered a secondary mutation. This new ability allowed him to telepathically connect with anyone on Earth, across all time, with his mind moving faster than light. He ascended to a higher plane of existence, and existentially became pure energy. Later, a fragment of the Phoenix Force mistook him for Jean Grey and revived him, so he casually walked back from death. Quentin, now wielding godlike powers, has confronted the Phoenix and demanded it resurrect Sophie. But when she chose death over being with him, Quentin returned to his non-corporeal form. Later, with help from Cade Kilgore, the Hellfire Club's new Black King, Quentin got his physical form back. After this, he used his telepathy to force world leaders to spill their darkest secrets publicly. That's how notorious he was. But then again, I wouldn't mind getting to know a few secrets from the likes of Biden, Trump, or Putin, Modi. Anyway, to deal with the fallout, Wolverine struck a deal with Captain America to take Quentin into custody for rehab and schooling at the Jean Grey Institute for Higher Learning. Iceman. Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, has seriously leveled up over the years. What started as basic ice powers has evolved into something much bigger, and as of today, he's among the Marvel Universe's heaviest hitters. In Marauders number 26, we see just how insanely powerful Iceman has become. In a battle, Iceman takes on Fin Fang Foom, a massive dragon known for taking down entire superhero teams. And guess what? Iceman comes out on top. When he was younger, he didn't realize just how strong his abilities were. Now, with control over temperatures and the power to reshape molecules, including his own, he's shown off some mind-blowing feats. One of his most impressive abilities is theoretically being immortal, since he can create a new body whenever he needs to. In Marauders number 26, the Marauders are transporting Krakoan alcohol across the sea when Fin Fang Foom shows up, fresh from an intergalactic fighting tournament and looking to steal their cargo. Iceman jumps into the fight, only to land some solid hits before the dragon shatters his body. But Iceman just forms a new, even bigger ice body and goes toe-to-toe with the dragon. He beats down Fin Fang Foom, even after being hit with flames. Fin Fang Foom eventually retreats, and Iceman isn't even tired. While teams like the Avengers have struggled against this dragon, Iceman is so pumped after the fight that he stays in his giant form and walks back to Krakoa across the sea. It's a jaw-dropping display of power that leaves his friends stunned and his enemies running scared. As long as there's water around, Iceman is pretty much unstoppable. He's already forced the retreat of a foe that's troubled Asgardian gods. Given his relative youth, it's only logical to assume Iceman will keep getting stronger, eventually surpassing even his current incredible status. Matthew Malloy. Matthew Malloy is the textbook example of a mutant who is beyond Omega level. Introduced in 2014's Uncanny X-Men number 23, Matthew is the most extreme mutant power source ever recorded by Cerebro, and it was Hank McCoy, aka Beast, who branded him as more than an Omega level mutant. Matthew had complete control over reality, could transform matter, was resistant to all other mutant powers, and could even bring himself back from death. When he was a kid, Professor X sensed his abilities and placed a telepathic block in his mind to stop him from realizing he had powers. But after Xavier died, that block failed, and Matthew's powers surfaced. The only way he was ultimately defeated was when the time-traveling mutant Temp prevented his parents from ever getting together, erasing his birth from the timeline. Before Matthew manifested his powers, the X-Men had no idea a mutant of his scale could even exist. When the Omega-level mutant Exodus tried to telepathically attack him, he was instantly killed. Matthew's powers were so far beyond Omega level that there was no upper limit to his reality manipulation abilities. He could reshape reality, survive any attack, and come back from the dead. It was like he could do anything he wanted with just a thought. You know, like extinguishing a star or destroying a solar system. Mr. M. Absalon Mercator, better known as Mr. M, made his debut in District X number 2. He has the insane ability to psionically manipulate energy and matter at a subatomic level, meaning he can basically control the world around him. Born in Belgium, Absalon had to flee to the United States after his powers accidentally caused the death of a local bully. He ended up in District X, a New York neighborhood that became a melting pot for mutants worldwide. There, he crossed paths with Bishop while working with the NYPD to keep an eye on the area. Mr. M was one of the 198 mutants who kept their powers after the events of House of M and Decimation. Some mutants even saw him as a possible messiah, and he didn't exactly shy away from the role. In the Krakoa era, most mutants who died were brought back through the resurrection protocols. But Mr. M was a rare exception. The X of Swords storyline revealed that he ended up in Otherworld, where he took control of a territory and named it Mercator. He's one of the few mutants Mr. Sinister doesn't have DNA samples of, which makes him a highly valuable target. Despite being largely removed from the happenings on Krakoa, Planet-Size X-Men showed that Magneto knew where Mr. M was and invited him to help terraform Mars. However, Mr. M refused, preferring to stay out of mutant affairs. Genesis. Genesis, the wife of Apocalypse, is a warrior mutant from Morocco and the host of the demon god Annihilation. Until now, fans only knew Genesis could control plants, a surprisingly simple power for someone called the Omega of Omegas. But Genesis spying on the Fisher King via his own gut flora gives new depth to her abilities. In the X-Men universe, an Omega mutant isn't just powerful, they have absolute control over their specific area of influence. Likewise, Genesis doesn't just control plants, she controls them in every possible way. And I mean every possible way. The human body relies on a variety of microflora to function, and Genesis can manipulate these too. This means she can shut down her enemy's vital functions at will, or supercharge herself and her soldiers into mutant super soldiers by fine-tuning their biology. Imagine every blade of grass or patch of moss as her personal spy network. She can recover information from any plant, which makes her nearly omniscient in nature. Combine this with Annihilation's hypnotic powers, and Genesis starts to seem unbeatable, especially with an army at her command. This gives her a terrifying range of abilities, from biological manipulation to gathering intel from the natural world. Stryfe. The villain Stryfe doesn't make it onto any official Omega-level mutant lists, mainly because he was born thousands of years in the future. Apocalypse infected Cyclops' son, Nathan Summers, with a techno-organic virus, and to save him, he was sent to the future where he became Cable. When Nathan first arrived, he was cloned in case he couldn't survive the virus. Apocalypse kidnapped the cloned infant and raised him as Stryfe. The ancient mutant groomed him to be his personal heir. While Nathan Summers, aka Cable, has the same mutant potential as Stryfe, the techno-organic virus limited his abilities, in the sense that Cable always has to use a bit of his powers to keep the techno-organic virus from taking over his entire body. Stryfe, on the other hand, has full access to the telepathic and kinetic powers, which are on par with the destructive potential of the Phoenix Force. Stryfe's powers are no joke. He's got the same telepathic and telekinetic abilities as Cable, but without the limitations imposed by the techno-organic virus. This means he can use his mind to manipulate objects, people, and even entire landscapes with devastating force. His telepathy lets him read minds, control thoughts, and create powerful mental illusions. In a fight, he can use telekinesis to hurl objects, create force fields, and even fly. His powers are so vast that they rival those of the Phoenix Force. So yeah, he's kind of a big deal. And that's the reason why he's also the main villain of stories like Executioner's Song. So that was all in this one. The only conclusion that one can draw from this video is that the sons and daughters of mutants are usually way more powerful than their parents. In fact, some of them are so powerful that they can't even control their powers. Interesting, don't you think? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.